Přou se, abychom nestratili svobodu, kterou nám před 30 lety otevřeli. Jak obnovit naděje roku 1989. Přijďte na konferenci Fórum 2000.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to welcome you at the official opening of the 23rd Forum 2000 conference with the title Recovering the Promise of 1989. This year we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Velvet Revolution, as well as the other dramatic changes that were taking place around the world, from Beijing to Berlin to Pretoria. We are remembering the period when the world was full of hope that finally freedom, democracy, and a global order based on peace and responsibility would prevail. Since then, the spirit of freedom, optimism, and civic responsibility in new democracies, as well as in the more established ones, has faced many difficult tests. Today, we are perhaps at one of liberal democracy's most demanding moments. Citizens in the democratic world seem frustrated with the way democracy works, with the inability of political leaders to face challenges such as climate change, the growing gap between winners and losers of globalization, or the impact of the technological revolution. Old certainties are crumbling, and countless new uncertainties are mushrooming. Our meeting aims to analyze these challenges and search for ways to renew the spirit of responsibility and strengthen democracy. We will also look at how these internal uncertainties of the democratic world and the ambitions of China, Russia, and others are reshaping the world. How will these converging trends affect our common global future in the next 30 years? The program of the conference takes place over 3 days, starting today and culminating on Tuesday. It is being accompanied already since Thursday by the Festival of Democracy, a series of 50 events prepared in cooperation with NGOs and other partners from mostly within civil society, universities, and cultural groups. All these events are open to the general public. Now to our program tonight. One of the symbols of 1989 was also this city, Prague. A beautiful, rich, and very organic, very dynamic place, which nonetheless also faces a number of challenges related to the democratic transition. As of recently, Prague also has a complicated relationship with a country that is among the main topics of the upcoming conference, with China. Some of you may know that Prague City Council has voted just in the beginning of this week to terminate its partnership agreement with the city of Beijing. Prague, over the past decades, has also gradually become the hub for a human rights and democracy activity. There is this annual Forum 2000 conference, there is the annual Human Rights One World Film Festival, there is People in Need, the largest NGO in Central Europe with a major human rights focus, there is the Prague Civil Society Center, there is Synopsis, there is Demas, and there are many other members of a strong and vibrant civil society for whom helping those who do not yet enjoy democracy and whose human rights are not respected is a natural choice. This is an important tradition that we hope to develop and to further build upon. The city of Prague is a crucial partner to Forum 2000, and therefore it is my great pleasure to welcome, in a way, our host, this conference, the Lord Mayor of the city of Prague, Mr. Zdeněk Hřib.
Dear Mr. Director, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a city where history was written 30 years ago. Welcome to Prague. It seemed then that democracy and freedom was winning in most parts of the world, and the rest of the countries would soon follow. We, the Czech and Slovak, of course, nation. We were excited by our newly reacquired freedom, and we also believe that once the Iron Curtain is down, the world will flourish with freedom and it will finally become a better place where the totalitarian thinking and acting will be just an unpleasant past. Well, we may be probably excused by our lack of experience, that we took the guarding of freedom and the cultivation of public arena as an easy ride, and we did not see their true meaning. In today's world, however, we see their real value. That in unfavorable circumstances, people who see democracy as anachronism and freedom as useless, but they have their clear objective, determination and support, will win the elections. Still, I believe that the values upon which our system is built did not play their last hand. Here in Czech Republic and also all around the world in other parts, we see that not everybody is devoured by consumerism, not everyone abandoned their political and civil rights, that people still can see what is true, what is false, and who is profiting out of the lies. And it is mainly young people who inspire me with faith and optimism. We are meeting here to advocate democracy and freedom, 30 years after the Velvet Revolution. And this is why I dare to say that this year's event is one of the most important ones in Prague this year. I wish us all that it contributes to further development of the democratic values and shows the direction we should follow. Current state of affairs and a constant attacks on democracy can either ruin it all or make it much stronger. And it is a task for us all to make those noble values prevail. Thank you for your attention.
Good evening. I'm Levon Volsky. I am from Belarus. Do you know what I mean? The invitation to perform here was absolutely surprising to me. I am happy to be here with you. Thank you. For more than 10 years, I was banned in Belarus. I was not able to perform here. There are some problems with democracy in our country. Today I will perform several songs for you. Let's go. Simple Words is the first song.
Простые слова, простые речи, хлеб на столе, полымя в печи. Это так просто, это так добро. Я с головою залезть под ковдру. Простые слова, Простые речи, простые словы, простые речи. Притемкам синім, зимовой порою, у доме батьківським усё так знайомо. І є з чим согреться, ёсць де сховаться. У доме батьківським, у матчиной хаті, простые словы, простые речи, простые словы, простые речи. Усё так надійно, усё так ґрунтовно, що тут додать, ну хіба що нічого. Можна жить далі, день прийде новий, добраніч паненки, добраніч панове. Простые слови, простые речи, простые слови, простые речи. Простые словы, простые речи, простые словы, простые речи, простые словы, простые речи, простые словы, простые речи. I need your help. Простые словы. So far. Простые словы. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lavon Volsky. Now, it has become a tradition that sometimes around this time we invite to the podium a very respected long-term member of the Forum 2000 family, member of our International Advisory Board, scientist, intellectual, Mr. Ivan Havel. Mr. Ivan Havel, please join me at the podium. Good evening. Mr. Havel, we are celebrating 30 years since the World Revolution. We have been going through a difficult transition. What was the most surprising thing for you during these 30 years, during this transition period?
Well, the surprising thing happened already soon after the revolution, but we didn't notice it. we were so enthusiastic about new situation, which came abrupt, that we didn't observe that there are various changes, not only one change, but something is very fast, like, I don't know, opening borders, cancelling censorship, and so on. And something goes extremely slow, and that is changing minds of people, the mentality question. And we somewhat thought that abruptly something happens and we will have a well-working democracy. What actually happened that somewhat people didn't know how to behave in the new situation, and so it was easy for some people, which are populists, who are able to persuade people to vote them for their simple-minded statements also. So this is a change we didn't expect.
Do you think that this mental transition, if I might call it like that, do you think the time will solve it, or what do you think needs to happen?
I don't think so. I think it will, actually it appears after the years. The first period was relatively, everybody was happy, everybody was inventive, people were starting new projects and they worked a lot. But slowly it became somewhat, it went awry. And what I think is that it is a question of several generations. It's not a question of one generation only, because our generation, and perhaps even the slightly younger, lived 40 years in a totalitarian system, which absolutely couldn't make them prepared for a new situation. 30
years from now, where do you think we'll be?
I think that to answer such a question is this meeting here.
Yeah.
I welcome you here, incidentally, and I hope that Forum 2000 will be able to find what will happen in the next 30 years.
Yeah. And I don't dare to guess if Forum 2000 will be around in 30 years, but I hope so. Mr. Havel, if you can now join me in welcoming our keynote speaker of tonight. Tawakkol Karman is a Yemeni journalist, activist, and Nobel Peace Prize laureate. She co-founded the group Women Journalists Without Chains in order to promote freedom of expression and democratic rights. From 2007 to 2010, she regularly led demonstrations and sit-ins in Tahrir Square in Sana'a. She actively participated in the 2011 protests during the so-called Arab Spring. For her democracy work, she was repeatedly arrested and threatened with murder. In 2011, Tawakkol Karman received the Nobel Peace Prize for her non-violent struggle for the safety of women and for the women's right to fully participate in peace-building work. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Tawakkol Karman. Thank you, please.
Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of you. Do you see me? Okay, good. Okay, I'm so happy to be here in Czech for the third time, and I am so happy to be my first time here in Forum 2000 and to meet great people like you, and thank you for your invitation. Dear friends, dear sisters and brothers, at the end of 18th century, the world was more open and people moved from one country to another without passports or personal documents. World War I and World War II created walls of restrictions and barriers, complicated relations, closed borders, and movements required documents and complicated procedures. Despite the sophisticated technologies and means available to us in the 21st century, the world is becoming more isolated, rejecting and demonizing nations and people. Looking at them suspiciously with hatred and considering them as a security threat. Dear friends, the Berlin Wall of World War II has fallen, yet many walls are being built today. All the outset of the 21st century between states and nations, civilizations, and individuals, while there were aspirations to promote emerging democracies with the fall of the Berlin Wall, and a greater commitment to human rights and good governance. But unfortunately, the world has moved in another direction where the value of democracy has declined. Today, democracy and human rights is no longer the benchmark that determines the relations of the superpowers with others. Instead, implicit understanding have emerged that conspire and turn a blind eye to major massacres and crimes against humanity. The senior democracies have opted for isolated and hostile policies against immigrants and are indifferent towards worldwide human rights violations unprecedented in human history. All this violation under the pretext of security, protection of their interests, and war on terror. Dear friends, the security and stability of the world cannot be achieved through isolation and racism or by exploiting counter-terrorism to classify peoples, societies, and nations as enemies and terrorists. The rise of racism in the West raises our fears and concerns as much as terrorism does. Here, let's talk a little bit about war on terror. You should know first that our peoples, special people in Arab countries, special in Arab Spring countries, suffer from tyranny, dictatorship, and terrorism at the same time. State terrorism is embodied in regimes that have waged wars against their citizens to prevent change and crush peaceful revolutions demanding justice and freedom. Terrorism and war on terror are exploited for political purposes and related to anti-terrorism or to containing or eradicating terrorism. 18 years after September 2001, we look forward today to a real fight against terrorism, which will never be achieved if the world continues to use the concept of terrorism to justify other objectives, but not fight terrorism. The fight against terrorism first requires that the global war on terror to be liberated from the misuse of the global order that has found in terrorism what meets their needs to reproduce and to defend their huge interests devoid of morals and values. The tyrannies also have found in terrorism what meets their needs to oppress their opponents and to protect their authority by blackmailing and fearing the West from the demand and the struggle of people for change, for freedom and democracy. And they fear the West that the alternative is terrorism, not democracy. You here in Europe know very well what price should be paid to get rid of tyranny. Now, I would like to ask you and ask myself and ask the world some questions. How does the international community allow themselves, after 2 world wars, to leave people at the mercy of authoritarian regimes? Why do many Western governments appear to be more in tune with despots, especially the Arab ones, betraying their liberal principles, which require them to advocate for human rights and support democratic people and trends? Why does the world offer us the bad choices between tyranny or terrorism? Could we fight them both? Of course. Our answer as people, as fighters for freedom, is yes, we will fight them both, tyranny and terrorism. Every war against terrorism is also war against dictatorship. Every struggle against dictatorship is also a struggle against terrorism. Every dictator is a terrorist, and every terrorist is a dictator. Free peoples are always on the other side of the anti-life pair, terrorism and tyranny. Terrorism and dictatorship are 2 sides of one coin. Terrorism is not fought by killing people, but by giving them life, by supporting their demands, aspirations, struggle and sacrifices for freedom, democracy, and rule of law, and for liberation from restrictions of dark dictatorships in whose cellars nothing flourishes except death, extremism, and hatred. Throughout history, insecurity has been associated with the loss of rights and the absence of freedom. Dear sisters and brothers, today in the Middle East, military regimes, tyrannical monarchies, and their affiliated militias are waging brutal wars against their own people, just for their aspiration for freedom, justice, dignity, and rule of law. All attempts by some governments in the Middle East, particularly Iran, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates, to create havoc, fear, and uncertainty among people and persecute, spy on, capture, torture, and abuse active opponents and women activists and harass them pose a threat to human global security, pose a threat to a human globe peace. Just for example, in Syria, human security has witnessed a horrific massacres, cold-blooded killing, and extreme brutality have unmasked their dictator, barbarity, and savagery. Syrians have been deprived of their rights to life and dignity. They have found themselves caught between a fascist regime and a fascist terrorist. And still, Syrian people dream and sacrifice for their freedom, dignity, and democracy. Egypt, Sisi military coup has killed thousands of people, arrested 10,000 just because they win in the election, just because they make a great revolution against dictatorship system, just for their continuing dream and aspiration and struggle and sacrifice for freedom, justice, and democracy. In Yemen, the issue is more complicated. The Houthi militia, which has a backward racist strategy and seeks to impose it by force, has committed and still commits all forms of violations, including killing, torturing citizens, journalists, planting landmines, etc., etc. And at the same time, on the other hand, the Saudi Emirati occupation, they are killing Yemeni every day. They blockade my country from the land, sea, and ports everywhere. They blocked everything in my country. Their occupation and their affiliated militias kill and torture and target political opponents and citizens in a clear attempt to undermine Yemen, to divide Yemen, to stop any effort from Yemeni people toward their democracy, peace, and rule of law. But with all this black image and with all this effort of these dictators, of these monarchies, unfortunately the international community still support them, still absence from all their violation. But there is something else. There is people in Yemen, in Syria, in Libya, in Egypt, in Tunis, and now in Algeria, in Sudan, still sacrificing, struggling for democracy, for peace, for rule of law, for anti-corruption, for anti-terrorism. And those people will win this battle. It's the battle of freedom and justice. Unfortunately, most of the West government has abandoned its logic and conscience at the same time. In spite of clear picture about what is happening in our countries, Western governments have decided to align themselves with the military governments and tribal regimes in the face of civic values in return of economic benefits. And this has caused many tragedies. Entire nations have been turned into fascist camps and battleground for devastating conflicts. But again, they will not give up. We will not give up. We will continue our battle until we win our freedom. So, certainly, the large number of migrants that have decided to leave their homes is not because of the bitter perks of living in Europe, but because of the unmatched level of repression that places their existence in jeopardy. A part of Western complicity with tyranny and tyrants in many parts of the world, including the Arab region. This problem is not new and recurs again and again. But what is important now is to help those people in their path to freedom, justice, and democracy, rehabilitate migrants, and emphasize that they are not invaders. It is shameful to find politicians and intellectuals who speak of migrants and migration based on their racist and fascist logic. especially in today's world that is witnessing great civilizational and human interaction, which is among the reasons that have led to today's development. Closing doors and isolation will not solve the problem. Rather, this will leave us with two bad choices: despotism, terror, poverty, racism, also on the other side. Again, closing doors and isolation will not solve the problem. Rather, this will leave us with two bad choices: despotism, terror, and poverty on one side, and other side, racism, isolation, and xenophobia on the other. Dear sisters and brothers, peace means many things. It is the security from fear, from hunger, from poverty. It means freedom. Freedom and security are complementary. Hence, comprehensive security can only be achieved in an atmosphere of freedom and human rights. Political and religious tyranny are among the top threats to peace and human security. All this deterioration in today's world must stop. Today, we have tasks that need a wider motto, a wider title: changing the world. This is an appropriate motto for a world that has retained its walls and whose iron curtains are casting their dark shadows in Middle East, Europe, America, and all over the world. We live in one world that has interlinked interests and relations, and the only way forward is to reform this world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Karman, for this powerful message and for the speech. Before we close, I have to say one important thing. The conference, the Forum 2000 project wouldn't be possible without our partners with whom we have been cooperating, with many of them for many years. And I would like to express our deep gratitude to those partners. Let me read at least the most important ones. Among them are the National Endowment for Democracy, the International Visegrad Fund, Jyllands-Posten Fund, the Avast Foundation, Deloitte, Carnegie Corporation of New York, Friedrich Naumann Stiftung, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, Jan Barta, Blíž k sobě Foundation, Taipei Cultural and Economic Office, European Commission, Czech-German Future Fund, and many others. We are very, very grateful for this support. I would also like to express my deep gratitude to our Board of Directors and our Program Council who have supported the creation of this conference, who have supported the creation of the program. And I would like to express my deep thanks to my team and my colleagues, our volunteers, whom you have met and you will be meeting over the course of the conference, and also without whom this conference would not be possible. So thank you to all of those. And now, before we close the evening and we dedicate ourselves to mingling and conversations and reception, I would like to give the stage finally for a final song by Mr. Lavon Volsky. After he finishes his performance, we will turn this place into a reception area, and you are all welcome to join us for an enjoyable evening. Thank you very much, and welcome to the Forum 2000 conference.
The next and last song is non-official anthem of Belarus.
Калі раптам адчуеш камунальныя пахі, жыццё цябе возьме ў пятлю. Зразумееш тады, што тры чарапахі па-ранейшаму цягнуць зямлю. Калі выйдзеш у горад ці залезеш у горы і з людзьмі усталюеш кантакт, зразумееш тады, што і сёння і учора наша месца на трох кітах. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, ты не чакай, сюрпрызаў не будзе. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, ты не чакай, ты не чакай. Не было Галілея і Боба Марлея, не было Сальвадора Далі. Ни Ленина, ни Леннона, ни Карла Линнея, киты и чарапахи были. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, ты не чакай, сюрпризов не будет. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, ты не чакай, ты не чакай. Каб любіць Беларусь, нашу милую маму, трэба ў розных краях пабываць. Зразумееш тады, пад тваімі нагамі тры сланы нерухома стаяць. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, ты не чакай, сюрпрызаў не будзе. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, ты не чакай, ты не чакай. Эй, ты не чакай, сюрпризов не будет. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, никто не чакает, и ты не чакай. I need a help. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, сюрпризов не будет. Эй, ла-ла-ла-лай, ты не чакай, ты не чакай. Еще раз, эй, ты не чакай, чакання не стала.